Hey scholars, welcome to chapter 20-4. We're looking at what are the major water pollution problems affecting not freshwater this time, but marine environments, looking at oceans. So we're going to take a look at how and why are they being affected. So in 2006, the UNEP, UN Environmental Program, is basically what that stands for. It did the state of the marine environment in 2006, and they actually did a survey, conducted a survey among all the different oceans, and figured out that 80% of marine pollution originates on land, which makes sense because we're the people on land. And most of it, 80–90% of that is actually sewage or municipal municipal sewage waste. So that's kind of a scary thought. And also, coastal areas most affected probably because we're seeing a lot of more coastal development, and that's exactly where the land meets the ocean. We have figured out that deeper ocean waters are better at dealing with pollution through dilution, dispersing of those particles and those pollutants, and also degradation because there's lots of bacteria down there on the bottom of the ocean floor to help deal with breaking things down, just as it would if it was a whale that died and fell to the bottom of the ocean. There's lots of organisms out there that are suitable or suited to actually break things down and help decomposition process. So ocean pollution is a growing problem and actually poorly understood problem as well. And the biggest thing, actually, this is what your book says, is the cruise line pollution and what's being dumped. It says scientists point out a little known problem of cruise ship pollution. A cruise liner can carry as many as 2,000 passengers and 1,000 crew members and generate as much waste as a small city produces. And some of that's coming in the form of perchloroethylene from dry cleaning materials, like because you need your suits and everything pressed when you're on a cruise ship, and also benzene from paint and solvents as well. So, and a lot of them, they generate lots of plastic garbage and things that are waste products, and a lot of times, for years, just for decades, cruise ships and other ocean vessels, which often sail through fragile ecosystems such as Florida's coral reefs, have been dumping their waste at sea, most of it illegally, but they have been doing it. U.S. coastal waters, we've seen raw sewage and agriculture runoff in the form of nitrates and phosphates, harmful algal blooms stemming from that runoff, and then also oxygen-depleted zones because of all the algae dying and being decomposed by bacteria. And this just kind of shows you very similar to our river system and occurring. You have your cities and your industries producing pollutants that end up going into the waters and then move out to the ocean right there at the coastline. And we have construction sites causing runoff. A lot of times we have lots of bacteria. This is the red tide. Excess nitrogen causes explosion of microscopic algae, which are protists. And then also we have behind that an oxygen-depleted zone because that there's decomposers breaking things down. So we see that kind of die off right there at the end, or that oxygen sag curve kind of just happening as far as the coastline is concerned. And in that you have lots of fish death, and then finally way out in the depth you have clear, oxygen-rich waters promoting growth of plankton. But that's just kind of a look at residential areas, factories, farms, and how they contribute to that pollution of coastal waters. And you can see the toxic sediments coming from the industry and being even down into the benthic system. And there is an example of a red tide. It's not really reddish per se, but it's orangish, and then there's basically millions of protists which can cause severe poisoning. What happens is the shellfish filter this out, and so if you ever see a red tide, you're never supposed to eat shellfish from a red tide because it can cause you major problems as far as neurologically if you eat shellfish that have soaked in a lot of those toxins that are produced by the dinoflagellates. Science focus, oxygen depletion in the northern Gulf of Mexico. Kind of a sad story since they've already got hit by Hurricane Katrina down in Louisiana, as well as had the big BP oil spill down there. But the science focus section is on the Gulf of Mexico, especially in the northern part of it. And we've seen severe cultural eutrophication, mostly because of runoff and because how big the Mississippi River Basin system is. And then from that, we see an oxygen-depleted zone because of all the algal death, and then the bacteria decomposing those, taking up all that oxygen. Over-fertilized coastal areas, again, because of fertilization. Trying to do is keep those greens and the land fertilized. All that's running off into the coastal areas. So there's preventive measures being taken. Instilling buffer zones, improving flood control, hoping to upgrade sewage treatment so it's not as heavily. Has many nitrogen and phosphorus molecules in it. But this is just kind of you can see how large the Mississippi River Basin is, and all that drains down here into the northern Gulf of Mexico. So you can see how much anything that you dump even in Ohio and Wisconsin and Minnesota and Montana, I mean, all those places are draining all the way down here into the Gulf of Mexico, and you can see how in red how heavily polluted that area is, and then the depleted oxygen around it. So that's just kind of the case study there. So ocean oil pollution is a serious problem too. We obviously saw the Gulf of Mexico affected by the BP oil spill, but there's been some other ones as well. And this BP oil spill happened after your book was written, so it doesn't have as much on there. But crude and refined petroleum, crude is actually the stuff you take out of the ground, and refined is the stuff that's actually been purified into gasoline to put in your cars, or oil into your cars as well. They're highly disruptive pollutants, especially when they're mixed in with water because they're non-soluble, so they have a lot of problems there. The largest source of ocean oil pollution comes from urban and industrial runoff from land, not actually from spills. But we have had some spills in the past. In 1989, the Exxon Valdez oil tanker occurred, as well as in 2002, the Prestige oil tanker, and then finally, I think it was 2006 or so when the BP oil spill occurred. No, it had to have been after that. It was 8, 9, somewhere in there, 10, as far as the BP oil spill. I don't remember what year it was, a few years back, though. So those are some of the biggest impacts, at least from oil. They contain volatile organic hydrocarbons, which can kill many aquatic organisms, and then also their tar-like globular ability to kind of adhere to one another stays on the Earth's ocean surface, which coats the coats of animals or covers the coats of animals and cause them major problems. And also some of those heavy oil components sink to the bottom, which cause major problems for the bottom dwellers and the decomposers down there in the bottom of the ocean. We do see a faster recovery time from if crude oil is dumped rather than refined oil. So maybe we should start trying only if we do have to move crude oil across the ocean, or oil itself, move crude oil instead of refined oil. We'll wait to refine it till it gets on our soil. The cleanup procedures are skimmer boats to literally take off the top layer because oil is lighter than water, so it does stay up above the water column. Also use absorbents like sponges and things to help absorb and soak in some of that oil. We've set the surface of it on fire before to burn off the oil. Also using specialized bacteria that decompose or break down oil as well. And so there's methods of preventing oil spills. Number one, don't use as much oil. That's our main goal. But also use tankers with double hulls that help protect. If there is an impact by some sort of thing, running aground, at least it has a second hull to kind of keep that oil intact instead of actually being spread around. So the last thing we're going to look at today are solutions of coastal water pollution and ocean pollution in general is just prevention. Reduce input of toxic pollutants, separate sewage and storm lines to kind of keep those things from one another, so we're not seeing sewage being untreated and dumped in there. Also, ban dumping of waste and sewage by ships in coast waters, especially those cruise liners, because they have so many people. Ban ocean dumping of sludge and hazardous dredged material. Regulate coastal development, oil drilling, oil shipping and all that kind of stuff. That would limit the number of spills you might have. And then require every tanker that does carry oil, hopefully it's holding crude oil, double hulls, so for protection. The cleanup is just improving oil spill cleanup capabilities by use of other means, maybe nanoparticles or genetically engineered bacteria to help dissolve or break down the oil or sewage. Require secondary treatment of coastal sewage. So before it actually gets pumped out in the ocean, required to be a second treatment of things that go on to try to bring out some of those nitrates and phosphates so they're not causing those algal blooms or the red tide. And also use wetlands, solar, aquatic, or other methods to treat sewage rather than dumping it straight into the ocean. That might help the overall state of the ocean. So we'll see you guys next time when we take a look at 20-5, how can we best deal with water pollution as a whole. See you guys next time.